Welcome to Evolving Ideas. I'm Elaine Smitha. This is Olympia's own alternative television show, the most exciting show going on the air. My guest today is Joy Gilbert, who has been abducted hundreds of times since she was 3 years old, and she's here to tell us about her personal experience. Whether you agree or not is not my concern. It is to simply bring you the knowledge for you to make your own mind up. So join me in welcoming Joy Gilbert. Welcome, Joy, to Evolving Ideas.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure that you are very controversial in many circles.
Oh, yes. I get all kinds of responses from people. The media is usually the area which I find most responsive one way or another, positive or negative. But what I experience from the people who come to hear me speak at my lectures and seminars is truly phenomenal. I was absolutely shocked when I first came out because I was so terrified. Even writing the book, I thought, oh, I'm going to put somebody else's name on it. I didn't want anybody to know.
Didn't want to own it yourself?
No, I didn't want anybody to know.
They thought you would
that it
be
was
weird.
Me. Yeah, you bet. Well, I didn't want it to hurt my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so after talking with friends and family and myself, knowing that I had to own this material, this was who I was, and in spite of whether or not people accepted it or rejected it, I needed to be who I was in the world, period. It was time for me to do that, and this is who I am. I had this experience in 1993, and it changed my life forever.
Totally,
absolutely.
Well,
Turned it upside down.
I first heard you on Art Bell's show, on the radio talk show, and that's on his Dreamland show, which is one of my favorite shows.
Right.
And I was fascinated with how vibrant you were and how dynamic, and your perspective was so filled with love. And I thought, boy, do we need this. We've got so much negative stuff.
Yes.
And I remember telling you that I had watched the movie Fire in the Sky.
Yes.
And you told me you laughed through it.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my goodness, most of the time people are hanging on to their chairs, because Hollywood sort of went berserk on some of their drama.
Yes, they did.
And even Travis Walton, who the story was about, even admits that himself.
Yes.
And so they kind of changed a lot of things in that story, so that it isn't really a true story.
Right.
But your perspective was so refreshing, and I just felt that we've had a lot of the other side, with a lot of abductees that we have read about who've been terrified by their experience.
Right.
And Whitley Strieber, of course, with his book Communion, and his whole perspective was pretty much that same way. And so when I heard you, I said, my goodness, this is refreshing. This is a whole nother aspect to be considered. And so then you said, well, you were booked until 97, and I thought, oh, what the heck, I'll write to you anyway, which I did, and now we've connected, which is wonderful, and here you are.
Yeah.
See, so that's what happens. You just put it out there and it happens.
Yes.
So you have had hundreds of experiences.
Yes.
Now, some people have one or two, and that changes their life dramatically, but how is it that hundreds
Well,
of
the
experiences?
difference between me and what someone else experiences is what I perceive as awareness. It's not that I'm the only one having these experiences, or that I've had hundreds and nobody else is, or that, just because somebody doesn't even know they're having these experiences, they're not having these experiences. Just because they don't know they are doesn't mean they're not having these experiences.
Well, that's a surprise, because I told you about some experiences that I've had that I've not had any answers to.
Exactly.
And it seems like when we went through this that, wow, these really were real experiences.
Right.
And I even had my brain waves done, so as I was telling some of these, to see whether or not I was making it up, or whether it was a figment of my imagination, or whether it was a real experience. And it came out that it was these were all real experiences, which was such a surprise to me.
Exactly. And if you remember, if you read my book, you did read my book.
Yes, I read your wonderful book.
Thank you. And we talked, I was 44 years old, and it was in 1993 before ever realizing that I'd had an alien abduction experience. It was that time in my life, January 31st, when I experienced an alien abduction, that I realized that I'd been having them all my life. So even though throughout my life I'd had what I would consider angelic intervention. For years, I felt that these beings were there protecting me, guiding me, loving me, caring for me, providing circumstances that were of benefit for me. And because I was raised a Christian, and my dad was Jewish and my mother was Catholic, and I was raised in a Methodist church by them because they felt that that was a good way to be raised. I was raised believing in God and believing in angelic kinds of things, believing in
that God is good and God is
mysticism.
love.
Exactly, exactly, and that He's always there to care for you.
Right.
So I was, as a child, I grew up experiencing what other people perceived or would call paranormal experiences. I myself thought, oh, okay, Jesus talks about this in the Bible, or St. Paul, St. John, they talk about these things in the Bible, so they must be okay. And so I'd have these experiences of the man coming into my room at night as a child. Well, my grandfather had just died, Elaine, when I was 3.5. And so when this being came into my room at night as a child, I thought it was my
your
grandfather. And he wore a fedora hat.
Yes.
Which is, my grandfather wore a fedora hat.
Oh, really?
To shade to shade his failing eyes from the sun. But what was most important to me was not the fact that the being came in or didn't come in, but the fact that the love that was emanated from this being to me could be nothing but good for me.
Well, that would be a normal response.
As a child, absolutely. And so as I grew into my adulthood, I began to see that life wasn't the way that I had been taught in the Bible and in school. Most of my socialization was done by my parents, and although they loved me very much, they cared more about what I was accomplishing in school, who my friends were, how I was socializing, instead of what I was feeling as a human being and the experiences that I was having with, if you will, beings of light, if you will, or my angels. And I think all children are taught to experience those things and allowed to experience those things until they reach a certain age when it's not okay for those to have those magical kinds of perceptions.
Well, they allow children.
Exactly.
What about the child who puts their dolly in the chair and they have this relationship with their dolly, or they'll say, well, yes, so-and-so, I have this invisible friend.
Exactly.
I mean, what about Harvey and the invisible rabbit?
I know, that's really great.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, exactly. So, I had those experiences, but for me, I didn't perceive that I was any different than anyone else. And it wasn't until I got into my teens and I started meditating, that was more a reaction for me of the Vietnam War. I wasn't into drugs. I was seeing that as a human being in this society, I was virtually helpless. A lot of my dear young boys and friends that I'd gone to kindergarten with and elementary school and middle school, junior high at that time, and high school were going to Vietnam, and many of them were not coming back. And the ones that were coming back jaded and confused and bitter and angry. And I didn't know how I could change what was happening. And I started meditating as a means of changing myself, making myself a better human being. And it was after I started meditating that things really began. I began to see more light and experience more, if you will, beings. And it was at that time that a being came to me and asked for my heart.
Well, now, wait a minute now.
Yes.
Ask for your heart.
Yes.
We're not making donations. We're not making any heart donations here, right?
Well, I didn't perceive it on that level. I believed that each of us
and it wasn't a love interest, right?
No, it certainly wasn't a love interest. But I believe that each of us come into this world to serve creation, to serve God, if you will. I like
kind
to
of have
use
that
the word,
feeling too.
Yes, and whether we know it or not, or whether we're a victim or a perpetrator of crime or whatever, each of us is a unique and valuable entity.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
That's right. We all exist in oneness.
Yes, I always figure that we are a success already because we made it through the birth canal, because we wouldn't have made it out of. I mean, the count, is pretty disproportionate to the result.
It's phenomenal. When I was
is.
working in child abuse, when I was working with...
You have a background in psychology, don't you?
I do. I have a degree in psychology. I graduated Phi Beta Kappa summa cum laude from the University of Oregon.
That's not too shabby.
No, it's not. And then I did graduate work in neuroscience and counseling. And what was so stunning to me when I worked in the field of child abuse was working with women who had taken crack, cocaine, had taken numerous drugs day in, night throughout the pregnancy. One woman, as a matter of fact, I got a judge to put her in jail for the remainder of her pregnancy, the termination of her pregnancy, so that she quit doing drugs. But I was astounded at the magnificence of those babies. Yes, there's all kinds of deficits, brain deficits, physiological abnormalities that occur to women who do drugs while they are pregnant. But when I saw so many of those children being born without anything but a drug addiction, you look at that and you know there's a God. You know creation is operating through everything. It is so merciful and so beautiful to see things like that. Shouldn't be okay, turn out okay for people. It's phenomenal. So I did that for a while, and that was wonderful. It was very hard working. I was a expert witness for the district attorney's office and attorney general's office. I spent an awful lot of time working with parents. I had a parent program.
Was this dealing with mostly child abuse?
Yes. I did many years ago work in early childhood education. I worked in alternative schools with gifted children, and I worked with advantaged and I worked with disadvantaged children. And then later became a program director. I worked for CSD, Children's Services Division, and
where was that?
That was in Eugene, Oregon. And then I worked as a program director for Lane County Relief Nursery, which is a fabulous program for providing treatment to children from the ages of 6 weeks, mind you, to 6 years who have been abused. So, and I had a parent program. I worked with the parents in parenting skills, developing parenting skills, so that anger wasn't,
I would like to ask you.
Prevalent thing.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you about this. I mean, could we just deviate just a moment?
Sure.
I mean, I just want to know.
It's very important to who I am for people to understand when I talk about joy and I talk about bliss and I talk about the love that I experience of life in life, for them to understand that I have really seen how decrepit, how ignorant, how sad creation, how people can be, suffering and misery. Yes.
Is there a common thread in child abuse homes that you could just say, most of it is
passed on?
It's passed on.
It's passed on from one generation to another. Clearly, a mother or a father demonstrates abusive patterns toward their child, and the child, not knowing any different, demonstrates, it grows up thinking that that's the way to relate, and they demonstrate those patterns to their children.
We teach
and
as we
so
are
we teach it.
taught.
So it's a cultural disease, is what it is. It really is. It's a very infectious, sad disease. But it's exciting for me as a person who is in that field to see the kinds of leaps that we as a culture have made.
Yes.
In acknowledging the problem.
That's true.
And really moving toward finding some way to prevent it, helping parents help themselves. And yes, one might say, it's like a drop in the bucket. It is, but one person that you benefit or help so that they can be a better person or parent, it just affects the whole society. So we're all so interdependent.
This is true.
That's the one thing that I came away with that was the most significant when I experienced the alien abduction and I felt myself become one with them, was the recognition that we are all one, and that everything I do and everything I think and everything I feel affects every other thing that exists within creation, not just with people,
Right.
but exists within creation.
It has to do with energy.
It really does. It has to do with very, very clearly with energy, not with what you think you are. If you look at that little model I drew over there, I drew a model of the...
We have one on the chart over there.
Yeah.
Camera can pick that up.
I drew a model of the human mind. I kind of like to... well, this is a picture of the alien. Isn't that an exquisite drawing? What I wanted to show here when I saw the alien was they were wrapped in a swirl of blue-white light. To me, I didn't, even though I experienced them as a physical form, I also knew they were light. And if you study physics at all, you will understand that as you take a molecule of your fingernail or a molecule of this knit skirt or your watch, and you put it under a microscope, and you take it down to its subatomic particles, down to its nuclear level down there, you will find that each of those particles end up being nothing. And then when it emerges out from the nothing is a frequency of light, okay?
That's true.
When I experienced quantum physics, very powerful. It's something that many people understood years and years ago, but it's only now become something that people are acknowledging. That's true. And scientists are really doing a lot of work on it.
They are.
And it is something real, because now we have the tools to identify quantum physics. So if you take things down to their finest particles, you'll see that they're at the source. Okay, so for me, these beings, say for instance, they exist on a subtler layer of creation. They exist in light, okay?
Well, they say now that light, that energy that we're getting, that we are made of light.
Yes.
And we're more hollow in terms of space between the cells than we are mass.
Yes. Yes.
This is what science is determining now.
Yes.
That, you know, and I had one scientist on my show one time, and he said, you know, we have all the energy we'd ever need in this much space. This is all compressed down.
Right.
It's all there, and out of which all creation comes. So here we are, a body in physical form, mass. We look like we're solid.
Exactly.
But we're not.
Exactly. And that's why I like to do this little drawing. It's not really very good, but it's incredibly accurate. When I've got up there the level of speech, I refer to the level of speech as everything that we see, everything that we hear, everything that we smell, everything in the phenomenal existence that's outside ourself, our skin. Then you think of the thinking mind. Okay, scientists say we use from 3 to 10% of our brain.
That's not very much.
No, and I was talking to a biologist, a microbiologist recently, and we were talking about DNA, because when I was on the ship with these beings, they told me that my DNA had been activated, and that I had to activate other people. Oh, well, you know, that's an astonishing thing to me, because I'd never heard the term activation or thought of it in terms of DNA or a human being being activated. But I understood that I knew that we only use from 3 to 10% of our brain mass, okay? So if there's 90 to 97% of our brain mass that we are not conscious of, that exists in the subconscious realm, okay? That means that when we perceive reality, we are only perceiving reality with 3 to 10% of our brain. I'm saying 10% and being generous. But the reality is if your perception is based only in 3 to 7% of your brain, how can you see things as they truly are?
Well, that's true. Well, we only see things anyway in the in the electromagnetic spectrum from the visible light. That's the narrowest band of all on the electromagnetic spectrum.
Exactly.
And the rest is all light, but it's not visible light.
Right. Right.
So when you say light, I mean it could be.
It's frequencies.
It's frequency.
And it could manifest in the terms of this exquisite flower, this book, this exquisite purple fabric, your watch.
Right.
It's just frequencies of light. And we have all agreed to perceive it in a certain way. Is this really what's happening here? No. I don't think so. For me, after being with these beings, when I look at the world, it looks like a shadow.
Really?
It looks like a shadow.
That's
when I see
interesting.
people, I look at them, and even though I see their form and I see all the different things that exist around their physical form, I look at them and all I see is light. So I have no ability to see them separate from me.
Would you, now when you're talking about this, would you call it like the auric field?
The auric field, auras, I don't really relate well because
that's
of my
light.
background. I understand, yes. I don't really relate to that concept well because of my background, because of my psychology and my science and my rearing, if you will. But my perception from what I've heard about auras and seen about auras is you could perceive it in that way. For me, it doesn't matter. It's just energy.
Well, I know that, but for our viewers who may have had some exposure to auric fields and that light around the physical body, this would give them a touchstone.
Yes. So for me, when I experienced the beings on the ship and they told me it's time to remember, I remembered who I was. I remembered what it was I was doing here. And the love that I felt for them was so profound, Elaine, and so powerful. I really didn't want to come back. I experienced myself literally turning to light. I experienced the particles of myself dispersing, and I felt myself as a truly light being. And I knew that that's what I was. That's what I have always been.
Yes, well, you know, some of the near-death experiences that have been related, you know, Daniel Brinkley is one, and very well known, who also had this same sense that he didn't really want to come back. He was happy being there and that it was all light. In fact, his latest book is dealing with that. So I don't think that being contacted by aliens is much different than
really
having
not.
this near-death experience, because I have several friends who have had this experience and they kind of relate a similar thing.
Right. Unfortunately, most of the media out there is presenting the negative aspects, the negative perceptual aspects, if you will. What we perceive is true, what we perceive is real about the alien abduction phenomena. We live in a society that is based in fear.
That's true.
And when you look at the world through fear and doubt, then you cannot see what is truly happening. If I walk into a room, if I was in here with you, and the moment I saw you, I felt, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid I can't get up on that stage in front of the camera. What would I experience being here? I would experience tremendous suffering. Okay, but you know, hey, I don't care, you know. I have no investment in how things turn out. I have no investment in what people think of me. I have no investment in whether, you know, someone thinks I'm a nut, a crackpot, or whatever. I am not here to live through somebody else's eyes. I am here to be the person I am, as each of us are.
That's
and
true.
so in being that, I fulfill my purpose to God. I fulfill my service to creation, which is all I care to do. So if I look at the world and I am who I am and I act in the world with the joy and the love that I am and I feel, then it's impossible for me to have a negative experience.
That's true.
So I never have a negative experience.
Yes, if you look for the purposeful good in everything, you know, that comes to your way, I find for myself, even if it's something that doesn't necessarily match my quote-unquote expected result in that moment, then I have to pause and I say, well, everything is purposeful good.
Right.
So what is the lesson in this? What can I learn from this, and how can I grow from this experience and become greater and more of who I am?
There comes a moment in time for each of us when we remember who we are, and in that moment we are given all that is and all that ever will be, because we are each so worthy of knowing and comprehending all the universes and all the worlds that exist in the phenomenal existence. When we go home, there is no thinking about whether this is a good thing. There is no looking for whether this is wrong or right. There is no looking or learning to be done, because in the moment you have the experience, the perfection of that experience has already manifest.
The wisdom?
The wisdom. And that's all there is.
Is there wisdom, though, without understanding?
Yes, absolutely. Again, understanding, where does it come from? It comes from our thinking mind. We can have wisdom. For me, absolute wisdom is knowing. And knowing comes from a different place than thinking. And we often, and you may be asking exactly the same thing I'm saying, but I want to say it in this way.
That's fine. Go
because
ahead.
we often equate understanding with learning and thinking.
Right.
And what
That's
I'm
why I asked that
saying
question.
is that you can have knowing without learning and thinking.
Yes, I agree.
And knowing is wisdom.
That would
Knowing
be
is absolute wisdom.
intuitive?
It would be, it's like core knowledge. It's like somebody asked me the other day, not too long ago, why do you think, okay, why do you go out there and say that this is an exquisite experience, this is a part of creation? Why would you go out and say that these aliens are good and they're not here to hurt us? Why would you go out and say that everybody has implants? Why would you say that? Don't you think that people would think you're nuts? And why don't you think you're nuts? Because I know. That's all. I can't tell somebody what I know. I can't tell someone what I know. They have to experience for themselves what is true for them. And I don't expect anybody to believe me. I am who I am. I present myself to the world, and those who understand, those who want to know, those who are ready to understand and experience the kinds of things I have experienced and I know are. I don't need to do anything.
That's true, but now let me just interject this now. What about dreams? Because everyone has a dream, and in the telling of the dream, no one would believe what they were saying because they hadn't had the experience of the dream themselves.
Exactly.
So is this not very similar to what you are
Exactly.
expressing in terms of
Exactly.
how we accept and reject?
Yes, exactly. So you're dreaming a dream that you think is your life. And one day you wake up and find that you're not who you thought you were. You realize that you are the dreamer having a dream.
That's true.
And that's what happened when the beings came to me. It was as if I was an amnesiac who awakened from a dream. And this world that I thought was my world, the joy that I thought, who I thought I was, the wife, the mother, the person who worked in the community, who did charitable work, the person who studied meditation, all those kinds of things, all the things I thought I was were the dream. And who I was so much more profound than I could have ever understood with my thinking mind. I had to lose what I thought about myself in order to cognize who I was.
In other words, you took the perceptions of say, what your parents said that you were, and your grandparents and your friends and all your other relatives.
And social institutions.
And
religious
yes.
organizations and what is it, peer groups, the university,
Yes.
all the things that I did
The labels.
to become, all the labels, all the perceptions, and I can tell you honestly that this knowledge that you gain throughout your life occurs on a cellular level. It really is. It is really not just philosophy. People are always thinking that what I speak about is philosophy. Absolutely not. When scientists have the tools to totally comprehend in science what I'm talking about, they will see that this is not something that's philosophical. It has nothing to do with philosophy. It is physiological. It is a physiological event. What are we here to do in creation? Why do we take form?
I think a lot of people are wondering, why are we here?
Yes, why are we here?
Why are we on this planet? What is my life really about? What
Right.
am I supposed to be doing with my life? I mean, was I just planted here to go through this day-to-day mainstream of, mediocrity, or am I destined for something greater? What is our mission here?
Each of us here take on form for one reason, and that's to bring light into the phenomenal existence.
Okay, now we have to stop here.
Okay.
Because you're talking, bringing this form. You better explain to the viewers what you mean by form.
Okay.
Because you have a little terminology there. That
Yeah, I
needs to be
do. I
explained.
created my own terminology because I didn't have words to describe what it was that I was experiencing. Okay, for me at this point, after being with the beings, I no longer perceive this as who I am. I feel that it is a vehicle to serve me, a container.
Now you're talking about
the
physical body.
The
Okay.
physical body. So
it's just a vehicle?
It's just a vehicle. So for me, it's like a car, and a car needs to be cared for and maintained in order to be fully functional.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Right. You gotta
so
fill it
that's
with gas.
why you do certain things, like you meditate.
Right.
You make sure you're in good environments for
Right.
yourself. You provide good nutrition for your body so that your body can function.
So
normally.
You're coming from a different perspective rather than just feeding your face for,
Absolutely.
just because it's mealtime.
Absolutely.
You're coming, if I understand you correctly, you're coming from the vantage point that you must nurture this physical form, this physical body, to allow you to do other things that are beyond that.
That are beyond the form. Beyond the concept of living in the world and just being who you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
living
now,
up to some standard,
living
whether
up to
it's
some
your
standard,
own or somebody else's.
Exactly.
The image?
The image, the
ego?
idea, the perception, what religions and what people have taught us to believe. Yes.
So that impacts us a lot, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
What other people
Absolutely.
think we
It keeps us in darkness. It keeps us in darkness. One of the greatest messages that these beings told me to share with people was that it was imperative to feel what we feel, that the feelings are not who we are, but only through them can we know what is real in this world. That we can think and we can read and we can do all those things. And I'm not saying that you can't find incredible books out there. My book is wonderful. I'm not saying that you can't find there's a lot of good books out there from Chopra, a lot of good books with good knowledge in them that should be read. But it's far more important for people to listen to what they feel and do what is in their heart than to follow someone else. We have been doing this forever and it doesn't work. All it does is to keep people, what is the word, in separateness. Okay, my religion is good, your religion is bad.
I know.
I'm going to go to heaven and you're going to go to hell because you're not a Christian, you're a Jew. This is not what God had in mind.
No, I agree.
This is not true even. It is not true. We are all one. When we recognize and see, as we move into different states of consciousness, as we expand our awareness and see who we are, we understand, not on thinking, not based on reading, not based on anything that we read, we acknowledge immediately that being as an entity of creation. It is not a conscious thought. It is immediately experienced within the whole being. There's a difference between belief and wisdom, belief and knowing. Like you were saying earlier, belief is something that changes with the wind. One moment you believe this, you get some new information, you believe something else. Like sometimes, people will come in or say, for instance, I'd be mad at my daughter if she came home late from a date. But when I, got all the information, I found that she wasn't late from a date because of anything that she did wrong or anything that she was doing wrong. She wasn't out,
I mean, she wasn't obeying all the tenets of the family.
Well, at that moment she hadn't, and so I was angry with her, right?
Of course.
But in the moment that I got new information about what had transpired, and I understood that she was, not, betraying my confidence and letting her go out, then, everything was all right. So with new information, your belief changes.
This is true.
So belief
That's what's
changes.
so great about this show.
Yeah, it's true. Belief changes as easily as we change our shoes. It's like that, or change of clothes. So I prefer to speak of belief in terms of a pair of pants or something.
Yeah. Do we get in our own way?
Pardon?
Do we get into our in our own way? Did these friends of yours say anything about how our ego and our perception of who we are gets in our way of being more of who we are?
What is exquisite about creation is that it is naturally unfolding, and the unfoldment of creation, like the unfoldment of an exquisite bud that turns into a flower, it occurs no matter what you think. So the unfoldment of who we really are is inevitable.
That's really beautiful.
There is nothing you can do to stop the flow of creation.
That gives a lot of hope to people.
Absolutely. There is a tremendous amount of love. If you could see the thousands and thousands of different layers of creation and beings that live in all the worlds of creation that exist only to love one precious human being. It was so astounding for me when the beings came and showed me who I was, and I understood that each human being was exactly like me, and all the beings that had existed with me throughout all the worlds of time and space lived to serve each of us. Mm-hmm. And it released me from all responsibility.
Now that's interesting.
I was liberated. Because
in what way?
I no longer felt responsible to take care of other people's problems.
Well, you can't live their life for them, so why do we get involved in it? Is that what you were learning?
That's what I was doing before when I was helping people I'm not saying that people shouldn't help other people.
No, I think we need to do that.
We have to do that. Mm-hmm. That's part of being a human being.
Right.
That's
it's
a part
humanity.
of our work.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't acknowledge who they are, mm-hmm. you don't serve them at all.
No.
And if you don't know who you are, mm-hmm. you can't acknowledge. That is them. How trite that is. I mean, you hear all the time, well, if you don't have love inside yourself, if you don't love yourself, then you can't love other people. Well, it's absolutely true. You know, and we all think that, we can do it, but we don't. We don't listen to ourselves. We don't love ourselves. We stay in abusive marriages. We allow I've been in more churches where, or Catholic or Jewish, where people in the congregations and the synagogue have been abused and allowed themselves to be hurt over and over and over again. You know, I mean, I'm not saying it's all that way. Of course it's not. There's some wonderful churches out there. But I am saying that people do not understand that who they are is the gift of life. Their beingness, their thoughts, their feelings, no matter what they are, whether they're negative, whether they're good, you know. So you have a negative thought. That doesn't mean if you want to go out and smack your mother-in-law or your father-in-law, I'm not saying that a human being should go out and smack their mother-in-law or their father-in-law. I am saying that human beings in this culture particularly do not honor that thought. They are constantly assessing, is this a good thought? Is this a bad? Should I have this thought? Should I have that? Instead of acknowledging the flow of creation that is constantly flowing through each of us and is absolutely exquisite. Positive or negative, it's just energy.
So you're saying that everybody is trying to balance the sheet from positive and negative.
Absolutely.
They're coming to that center point,
Absolutely.
trying to find some answer for themselves. And the act of creation is ongoing. As you were saying about how the flowers bloom, I look at my yard and I see these plants, and despite all my efforts to deter their growth, they still continue to do that.
Exactly.
And I look at the lawn when I mow the lawn, you know, and the grass says, "Thank you very much for giving me another opportunity to grow again."
Exactly. Exactly.
I just am. I'm so impressed It's been wonderful for me to live in that kind of an environment because I grew up in the city, concrete kind of thing, and to be in nature and to watch the ongoing growth. And it's very gradual. I can cut back the plants, and pretty soon there's little tendrils that go out.
Exquisite.
You can't stop
You
it.
can't
You can't stop
it.
creation. It's just always there.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly being rewarded with great messages.
Yes.
How creation works.
Yes.
So, well, now on this light being, it came in blue-white light.
Yes.
Is this the color and essence of what this energy is when you can see it?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Because we keep getting reports about that.
It turns to white because if you look at white, what is white light? If you take all the colors of the rainbow
of everything
and
together.
you spin them, then they turn to white. Okay?
All together.
But before it turns to white, it turns to blue, a blue-white light. And what is it? I mean, we are, as a planet, we are traveling, I think it was 63,000 miles per minute in space towards a blue-white star.
Yes. Isn't that
is
interesting?
So exquisite to me. What is blue-white light is found at the very finest layers of creation. So for me, how can I relate to these beings? Only as angels. See, I don't like to use the term angel because people have a perception of what an angel is.
Yes, they have that connotation of what
they
it is.
They do, and it's more than that for me. You know, I didn't know they came in ships. That was a stunning shock to me, that they came in ships. I never believed in ships, but they do have ships. And when we look around at our own world, the world that we see with our eyes, we see all this incredible life. We see frogs, we see ants, we see cockroaches, we see exquisite kinds of deer and buck and and plants and all this incredible life. So how is it that we could perceive that just because we don't see it, it doesn't exist?
This is true.
When I talk to people about the fact that they are light and the fact that they are the love and the joy of creation and that they are the gift of God, each of us are, they say, oh, I'm suffering now. Oh, I have this suffering. Oh, it's true. We all experience these kinds of things living in the physical body, living in the phenomenal existence, living on this planet. We have an opportunity to experience suffering. If we remembered who we were there, we could not experience one moment of suffering because the joy and the light that we are is so overwhelming and so powerful, we would not be able to have a human experience. Why do we take on bodies? To have a human experience. That's the only reason. To have a human experience and then bring the light of God, if you will, into the body, into the physical form.
Which would change the frequency and the vibration of the body.
That's right.
It would make you lighter instead of heavier.
That's right. It changes everything. Changes the molecular structure of the cells completely.
Transmutes them.
Transforms them, transmutes them, turns them to light. That's called enlightenment. So for me... You
mean enlightenment is not some destination?
No. It is when literally the cells turn to light.
A lot of disappointed people.
No, it's you already are enlightened. People are always looking for it outside themselves, and all they have to do is be who they are, because God is always coming to us. All we have to do is quit trying to create it, trying to make it happen, and allow creation to show us who we are. It's the letting go and being who you are in the world that allows God to come to you. It's the holding tight to something keeps it away from you.
So you have to relax and let it go.
Have to let go.
There's a saying about let go and let God.
Yes.
That works?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there ascension? Do these alien beings say that there's anything to do with ascension? Because I think a lot of people are waiting for that.
Absolutely.
Ascension, and what does that mean? What does that mean to them?
To me, or to them, ascension is when the human form takes on the light body. And it is as if heaven and earth merge in one form.
Can we do that here on this plane?
Absolutely. That's the point. There is no other reason to be born except to bring the light of God into form, in a physical body.
Is that what the aliens told you?
Yes. It's more like a knowing when I experience with them, even though sometimes I speak of it in terms of communication and talking. It's more like they are me and I am them, and so there's no separation. So it's not like channeling at all. Mm-hmm. It's like being.
Being one.
Being one. And that's it. So it's not a coming and going of knowledge. It's a constant in every state of consciousness. It's constant in sleep. It's constant in dreams. It's constant in every state of consciousness that you live. So for me, the joy is never, ever gone. Even when somebody's rude or unkind, I don't experience it. I don't feel it. When the beings came and told me it's time to remember every moment of suffering that I had ever experienced, living here in this life as joy was wiped away. It was just completely wiped away. Not only do I hardly remember it, but I don't feel suffering.
So was it like a magic wand when he said it's time for you to remember?
It kind of was. It took about 9 months for me to be able to live in my body again, because it was like my body was all new.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting feeling.
It was. It really was. It was like there was this vast universe looking out from my eyes. Mm-hmm. Before it had just been joy, and she was just looking at form. And now I was seeing all this phenomenal light. I was seeing choir of beings. I was experiencing all these different layers of creation simultaneously while being in a body, and I could hardly walk.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was very difficult at first. I mean, it was tremendous joy. Tremendous joy. Don't get me wrong, it was wonderful, but at the same time it was shocking and startling and awesome. It was hard to move, it was hard to think, it was hard to, function. Mm-hmm. And so it took me, I'd say, about 9 months to really integrate it. And then now I can carry on a conversation with somebody and have all these experiences.
That's wonderful.
And keep focused on what's happening on each layer.
Did they come to you when you were asleep? And we hear this, where they, especially even if you have a partner in bed with you, where they don't even know what's going on, and pretty soon you are gone. Did they just, is it like Beam Me Up, Scotty on Star Trek? I mean,
yes, it is.
It is. It really is? Oh my goodness. Okay.
I bet
you stand in this beam of light and boom.
That was how it felt to me. I can't say it any other way. Yes.
Were you ever scared? Were you conscious enough to be
Well, I was
aware of your
completely
feelings?
conscious, and I was not afraid until the doctor first came.
What doctor?
The doctor I experienced on the ship, the male
Oh, you
being.
mean they had a medical doctor on the ship?
Well, the doctor was the male being. There were the female being and the male being. And
so there were only two of them that you perceived?
There were, in this one experience,
I
the
see.
experience where they told me it's time to remember, there was a female being and a male being, and then there were 4 other beings that ushered me to the ship.
Did they wear white coats, like lab coats?
No.
They didn't?
I didn't wear one either, so I was buff.
Were they buff?
Yeah.
They were buff too?
Well, their form was different. No, they had no clothes on. I didn't see them dressed. I only saw them drenched in light.
Well, that's a good cloak.
Yeah, it was beautiful. But what was also incredible along with this, this experience that I had was, I'm almost 48 years old, right? And things aren't where they were when I was 25, Elaine.
I see.
Yes. And I'm not
You're talking about
125
you're talking about the
pounds
physical
anymore.
form.
Yeah. I'm not, the perfect 10, not that I ever was, but, I wasn't bad, So anyway, when I went and I looked at myself shortly after this happened, and I was stood, completely naked in front of the mirror, And before in my life, I'd look at myself, oh, you know, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I've got rolls, my breasts are this size or that size, and, you know, I should be, you know, this or that. And for the first time in my life, when I looked into the mirror, all I saw was perfection, the most exquisite human body. It was just absolutely breathtaking.
Appreciation.
Absolute love and regard for the being who is me.
Well, the human body is a marvel.
Yeah.
And we
really
have
is.
been conditioned, I can't find any other word that's better than that, but to clothe the body. Part of it, I think, came from living in the bush where the weather and the conditions
Right.
of living in an environment such as I found when I was in Papua New Guinea with the natives there, you know, I mean, it was more comfortable. It was hot and humid, and so they
Yes.
didn't wear a lot of clothes, but when they were going through the bush, then they obviously put something on. Otherwise, you end up with scratches and bruises and things
Right.
like that, you know, scars. So I think just the native adaptation to the environment started this, you know, but it's gotten to the point now of fashion, and
Yes.
which I think is fun.
Oh, it's
you
great
know, it's
fun.
great fun.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't find anything wrong with that at all. I
no.
think that's really, really fun.
Yeah.
So,
As long as you love yourself,
yes,
no matter how you think you look, if you think you don't fit society's conventional pattern of what a woman should look like, or a man, men experience the same thing. I know
Yes.
my husband is always, you know, patting his belly and saying, oh, you know, I'm skinny. You know, no, honey, you're not 25 anymore. Neither am I.
well, look what he created.
Exactly.
He
Did
created
very
that.
well.
Well, you know, we've had a consciousness here in this country about being slim, and that's supposed to be
Yes.
the idol. But if you go over to Italy, it's the one that's plump that's most adorned.
So it's culture to culture.
It does. It changes,
So,
doesn't it?
It does. But we should love ourselves no matter what we think we should be. That's their message, truly, is love. Love and caring for ourselves. It is only honoring ourselves that we can truly honor other people. And we spend, as a little girl, I was taught that I should love my neighbors, and I did. I was taught that I should care for my neighbors as myself, and I did. But there was no one in all the schools and all the places that I ever lived that taught me how to love myself. And I believe that these beings taught me how to love myself. And through the love I had for myself, I was able to enter into a doorway. And they stood on two sides of that doorway and literally ushered me into a place of absolute joy and love. And now I see nothing but joy and love in everyone.
That's wonderful.
Even murderers. People say, oh my gosh, a murderer, you can't. If he's a part of creation, he is God. I'm not condoning the act, but I'm acknowledging what and who he is. And we are all deserving.
That's interesting. Do you get much flack on that
Oh,
one?
sure. People don't like that.
It's the make wrong.
Yeah, pardon?
It's the make wrong.
Yes, it's the judgment, the concept of this is good and this is bad, and they don't understand that that creation is unfolding naturally exactly the way it's supposed to, and that what they perceive as good and evil is only the polarity of energy that exists to sustain and maintain the phenomenal existence. Creation emerges out of the unmanifest in polarity. And creation does not judge what is good or what is bad. Creation is.
That's true.
It's light, it's love, it's pure perfection and beauty. And like the human body, the cellular structure is always dying. The skeletal
That's true.
system dies, every 2 years, and a whole new skeletal system is remade.
I think 1 year.
Ask 1 year? Shall we ask each cell if they've suffered in their death process? You know, are our vision so small that we cannot see the magnificent magic and splendor that is happening through this whole planet and all the universes?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Joy, we've come to the end of this show.
Okay.
Can you believe it?
No.
Well, we've had such a good time.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you so much for joining me on Evolving Ideas, and we're going to have another show together so our viewers will have another experience with you and to learn more. And until next time, I'd like to ask my viewers to write to me. Let me know how you like the show. Write in care of WebWorks, P.O. Box 3695, Olympia, Washington, 98509. So we're going to have another exciting time with Joy Gilbert, as well as many other wonderful shows on Evolving Ideas. So join me next time. I'm Elaine Smitha.